Time for questions to the First Minister, and I call Stuart Dixon. Dixon's not in his place. I call Michelle Guy.
The online environment is becoming increasingly unsafe for women and for girls. Online abuse normalises harmful behaviour and can have long-lasting impacts. The End Violence Against Women and Girls strategic framework recognises the need to address online harm. We're continuing to work with partners to address all forms of violence, abuse and harm experienced online. Ofcom has responsibilities for addressing harms to women and girls online, and junior ministers recently met with Ofcom officials to discuss their work and also their ongoing plans to help protect everyone online, including women and girls. A number of social action initiatives have sought to harness the power of social media to change attitudes and to tackle violence against women and girls. This includes the Power to Change campaign, which we jointly launched with the PSNI and the Department of Justice earlier this year. It includes a targeted messaging on social media which urges men and boys to help play their part in effecting a cultural and societal shift.
Mrs. Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, the First Minister, for the response. The issue of smartphone access and digital devices and the associated impact of social media is a real issue of concern in our communities. Does the First Minister recognise the frustration of many that the Executive Office refuses to take the lead on developing online safety strategies and policies in Northern Ireland?
I think that I think that we all need to work together. I think that this is a societal problem that we have to address together, and the member might be aware that Ofcom are currently consulting on draft guidance which sets out 9 areas where tech firms should do more to impose online safety. So I think that is the right way in which we need to engage this issue. Certainly, as I said, our junior ministers have met with Ofcom just recently where they discussed these very issues. So I suspect we will hear a lot more about that in the coming weeks and months. But certainly I think that the strategy that we have itself is really, really important to have that in place, and I'm glad that was one of our first strategies that we were able to publish. But certainly the Ofcom draft guidance, I think, is something that we're all going to very much welcome.
On Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At a recent question time, I asked the First Minister that when it comes to safeguarding women and young girls, did she agree with me and the vast majority of women that believe that biological men should not be in women's safe spaces, in particular women's changing rooms? The First Minister did not answer me. So in light of the Supreme Court ruling which said that in terms of sex and gender, it's biological sex that defines a woman, can I ask the First Minister, do you still not answer the question? Is it yes or is it no? And what is your view on the Supreme Court ruling?
Well, firstly, I've said to the member before and I'll repeat it again, we need to be very sensitive around these issues. These are complex issues and we need to work our way through the outworking of the Supreme Court ruling. We're all aware of the headline. You yourself have just spoken about it here in this chamber. But you also forgot to acknowledge any sensitivity around the issue at all, particularly to our trans community who are feeling quite attacked right now and feeling quite under attack in their own community and their own society. So let's be mindful of that. Let's work our way through the ruling that we've had in the Supreme Court, which does not cover here because it refers to the Equality Act in 2010. We ourselves have sought advice from our own officials. We await the Equality Commission's ruling and guidance because I think that will be important for everybody in terms of how we would respond to this in a wider way, whether it comes to any issue that is relevant to it. So I just encourage a bit of sensitivity in the chamber. I encourage people to work towards an inclusive society. I encourage the community, or for us all, to demonstrate some compassion for LGBTQ community right now.
Orlia Flynn.
I can call you, and I thank the First Minister for our answers so far. The First Minister will know that this issue of tackling violence against women and girls requires a whole government and whole societal approach, and as such can the First Minister outline how our young people are being engaged with in terms of this process and this strategy?
Well, thank you for that, and I think you're absolutely right. It does require that whole of government, whole of society approach if we're going to end the scourge of violence and misogyny towards women and girls, whether that be online, at work, in school or at home. So I think we all have to continue to reach further to do everything that we can, and I think we need to make the space to ensure that In particular, the voices of our young people are heard, because for young people growing up in today's world, it is a very complex world and things are very different than to even whenever I grew up. So I do very much value the work of our strategy team in terms of working with the Education Authority, the youth engagement team over the past 2 years to kind of build that wider societal approach, but to very much listen to and engage with youth panels right across the north in terms of giving them a voice in the work that we develop in terms of trying to respond to this societal issue which we have. I can say to you that we've also established youth reference groups, and I think that these will be crucially important because they also include the Commissioner for Children and Young People. We've got the Secondary School Student Union, we've got the Youth Forum, we've got Girl Guide in Ulster, we've got a whole raft of young people's groups that are coming together to help shape this. And I think in particular in relation to, the member may have saw the Power to Change campaign, that in itself is very much something that young people got engaged in and actually helped us to devise that work. So collaboration is going to be key, and for my part, we'll continue to engage with young people and others out there in terms of amplifying their voices and empowering our young people actually to speak up. So I think it's only by speaking out and highlighting these issues that we can make the difference that I'm sure all agree that we want to see in our society.
Cara Hunter.
Thank you, First Minister, for your detailed answers so far. Can you confirm whether a review of the 2020 to 2025 online safety strategy is planned? And if so, will you ensure it includes a specific focus on ending violence against women and girls online? And also, First Minister, if you've had any recent conversations with Ofcom on these matters?
Yeah, as I've said, actually, our junior ministers just recently, in the last number of weeks, met with Ofcom to chat out the work that they're doing, and in particular the work that they're doing around the strategy going forward. So what does that look like? And we're hoping that, well, Ofcom themselves have set out 3 objectives in terms of what it hopes the draft guidance will achieve, and that is to give providers a detailed and holistic framework for understanding harms to women and girls online. So this is very much geared towards those service online providers, to set out practical and ambitious steps that providers can take to secure women's and girls' safety online, and then to encourage service providers to take action to achieve a safer online for women and girls. So they have set out 9 actions, which essentially says to technology firms, this is what you must do, and then we all can hold them to account. But they intend to publish that guidance by the end of this year, and then to publish an assessment of how the providers are responding to these recommendations, and they're going to do that in the first half of 2027, so about 18 months into the publication, and hopefully we'll start to see positive changes in terms of what we see then.
Ms Hunter just asked a question, and during the First Minister's response, 2 members walked across the front of Ms Hunter whenever the First Minister was replying, and that is not protocol in this House. So I just encourage members, if they're coming in late, to try and observe that you don't walk across the front of 2 people whenever they're in an engagement in that respect. I call Diane Forsyth.
3, please, Mr Speaker.
The reform and transformation of our public services is an executive priority as laid out in the programme for government. The voluntary and community sector is obviously a key partner in helping to address the challenges facing our public services here. Our officials regularly engage with the sector in the planning and delivery of our priorities, and we also would expect that other departments would do likewise. We have also been very clear that we want to achieve delivery. To achieve what that will require collaboration with our stakeholders, our key stakeholders, including the community and voluntary sector, who have a vital role to play in all of the work that we drive forward.
Ms Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and as the Chair of the All-Party Group on Voluntary Community Sector, I welcome the First Minister's recognition of the value. But as we move forward to public sector transformation pieces, I would ask the Minister, will there be an attempt to quantify some of the return on investment from some of our voluntary community sector organisations? For example, recently in Public Accounts Committee, we had Extern and Niacro in given very specific examples of how a small amount of funding to them has significant value in terms of outcomes on reducing adult reoffending.
I have no specific conversations in relation to that measurement piece, but I do think it makes good sense. I think that as we move forward to establish our delivery, having established our delivery unit, and we move to transform public services, then we have to open our eyes to the things that work very well in society. And quite often, from my experience, and sounds like it from your own also, the community and voluntary sector do provide services that if it was brought back into within the control of departments, it would cost an awful lot more. So I think if we can find ways to ensure that we, properly capture what they do for what we invest, and then perhaps ramp that up where it works best. So certainly I can take that away, and we can discuss that as part of our delivery unit work as we advance that even further.
Good last Ken Collier, and I thank the First Minister for her responses so far. Can I ask the First Minister to detail her thoughts on the benefits of community and voluntary sector partnering with government in delivering services that support and that build communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said, I think that we all and all of our constituencies can attest to the value of the community and voluntary sector, and very much so that they're the lifeblood of our local communities. And the work that they do on the ground on a day-to-day basis really makes a difference to people's lives. So I would absolutely concur in terms of commending the work of our community and voluntary sector. I see it every day in my own constituency. I see what's being done at a very local level, whether that be the GAA, the local sporting organisations, whether that be the local community groups, local residents associations. So many charities out there, senior citizens groups, those that work with our migrant and newcomer communities. There's just so much to be appreciative of in our society, and I think all of that helps to build a better and wholesome society for us all. So I think in looking forward, particularly given the challenging fiscal climate that we face, we need to continue to learn from what works well, actually, and replicate it and do more of it, and actually work in tandem, as I said, with our community and voluntary sector into how we can better design public services, and that's a conversation which I'm certainly up for having.
Paula Bradshaw.
First Minister, for your answers so far on this issue. I very much agree with the sentiments that you have raised in responding to this question today. I suppose one of the issues that we all hear from the community and voluntary sector is the issue around sustainability and funding pressures, and I'm wondering what role you can play as First Minister in terms of ensuring their continued delivery into the future. Thank you.
Minister.
Yeah, I suppose what I can say is that we will continue to work with them, and I think that's vital. We have to have that open communication, because they can help us so much in terms of what we want to achieve, particularly when it comes to the transformation agenda, doing things better. So I certainly will continue to work with NICFA as their representative organisation, but also with many others. You only have to take a look at what is delivered across a whole raft of services by the community and voluntary sector, whether that be Sure Start, a great example, I think, of community and voluntary sector working with the department, the work in the health improvement area. Even within our own department, we have brought forward a pilot programme which actually is about collaboration, test and learn pilots, which are exploring how we can better place collaborative working between government departments and the community and voluntary sector. And if that's something, that model that we test and works, then it's something that I would like us to pick up and run with. So I think there's an openness on our part to engage and to continue to listen to those that are providing services on the ground, because ultimately at the end of the day I think they're best placed actually to give us advice as to how things are working or not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First Minister, you mentioned the Reform and Transformation Unit. We haven't heard that much about the detail of its working. Has it been set up, and when will the House have a detailed update on its work?
Sir.
So it's not just one area of work. We've identified a whole range of areas of work. So I can tell you that we have our Public Sector Transformation Board. So that's already established. It's a non-statutory and independent body whose primary role is going to be to advise and make recommendations on how to utilise funding which has been ring-fenced for transformation. We've got our sustainability plan, which has been agreed by the Executive. We have just recently, as part of the reform package, Minister O'Dowd had announced the 129 million for 6 transformation projects, and we're hoping to make more announcements on that actually very, very soon. We have established the delivery unit then also within our own department. So you can see there's a whole raft of a transformation package and reform package that will, which I think will make our dividends over the weeks and months ahead. And then in addition to that, the work around AI, how that can be used and harnessed more, is another area in which we are focused on as well.
Kelly. First Minister.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, Junior Minister Riley will answer this question.
We know the significant and positive impact the current Urban Villages programme has had in communities working through successful delivery of the remaining capital projects, which will increase access to shared space facilities and continue to promote integration across the 5 urban village areas and beyond. We have set out the strategic direction for urban villages, which includes completing the current Urban Villages plan, and securing the sustainability of capital projects by supporting these community organisations taking forward large capital projects.
Mr Kelly.
Going biggest lesson I certain for agriculture and might I bend procedure just a little just to welcome the Holy Cross Boys School Council and their teachers here up in the public gallery at the moment before moving on. In terms of looking forward, can the Minister detail the criteria to be part of Phase 2 of the Urban Villages programme?
Yes, Garamayagat, and I thank the member for that question, and can I also echo his very welcome to the school above. So yes, as we come to the end of Phase 1 of the Urban Villages initiative, it is worth reflecting that this project has supported a range of community-led, cross-cutting and capital projects that have made a real difference to improving good relations. Along with Junior Minister Cameron, we have visited many of these projects, and I know that the member has been supportive of this work in his constituency of North Belfast. It's also worth noting that to date the Urban Villages has delivered approximately 50 million of capital and 15 million revenue investment to date, with over 58 capital projects that are now completed and over 417,000 users, 1,800 programmes, activities and training courses delivered, and 923 construction and administrative jobs have been created. In terms of looking to the future, we're planning for a future Urban Villages programme, which includes joined-up delivery between departments that will enhance the linkages Urban Villages has made in supporting ministerial priorities. We've also established a working group to take forward the development of Phase 2 of Urban Villages, which includes establishing the criteria for the future programme. And as I've said, once the criteria has been agreed, we will of course come and update members on that.
John Dodds.
Mr Speaker, question number 5, please.
Minister.
With your permission, I will answer question 5 and 13 together. The announcements made by the US administration on the 2nd of April set significant tariffs on goods entering the US market from over 60 countries, including 20% tariffs on EU goods and 10% on UK goods. While President Trump has since announced a 90-day pause, 4 countries hit by higher US tariffs, the measures have sent shockwaves through the international economy, creating concern and a lot of uncertainty for businesses and for governments worldwide. We've focused on building a globally competitive and outwardly focused economy. The US is an important trading partner for us. In 2024 alone, we exported 1.7 billion of goods to the US and imported 0.75 billion. Any actions that create barriers to trade with this significant market are obviously always going to be unwelcome. So we've been working closely with our Economy Minister to understand what those announcements mean here for businesses. But as international trade is a reserved issue, we continue to engage at both the political level and official level to ensure that our economy and businesses here are protected as far as is possible, and we continue to engage with the Irish Government also.
Mrs Dodds.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, First Minister, for your answer. However, it was a very general answer. Could I ask specifically, should President Trump reimpose those tariffs? Northern Ireland will obviously be hugely disadvantaged being in the single market for goods and having to apply the EU Customs Code, and therefore liable to pay duty on US goods coming into Northern Ireland. What specific measures have you suggested to the UK Government that they might employ in order to protect Northern Ireland?
The question was a more general question, but let's be very clear. Tariffs will serve none of us well. I think tariffs are bad for business. Tariffs create uncertainty. Tariffs can lead to so much uncertainty that we end up with a hike in inflation. So this is not a good scenario for anybody to be in. So what's important right now is diplomacy. What's important right now is conversation. What's important right now are identifying what our priorities are here locally, and we have done so working with the Economy Minister, and we continue to engage with the British Government, with the Government in Dublin also, and we have done so over the course of the last number of weeks. Unfortunately for us at this moment in time, international trade is still a reserved issue, so therefore we need to continue to engage with Jonathan Reynolds, the Minister for State for Business and Trade, and work out a strategy as far as possible. But to be very clear to yourself, the Economy Minister has advised that she has set out 5 key asks in terms of our own circumstance here, because we have a particular circumstance that needs to be recognised. And we've made that point that whenever it comes to these discussions, because we're going to go back to this after this 90-day pause comes to an end. Whenever they get back around the conversations or in the lead up to that period, that we have asked that they keep our unique circumstances in mind. So that is to the fore of all the conversations that are had, and we've made that case to both the British Government and the Irish Government, and that's in relation to any negotiation around what might happen next. It's also in relation to any countermeasure that may be brought forward. We've also asked, or Kiva has also asked, for the Government to act in concert and to minimise any divergence between Britain and the EU. She's asked to provide a properly resourced advice service for our local businesses, because there's so much uncertainty and people are anxious. They need to understand how the tariffs affect them. I know that she's also held a round table with businesses here to understand the implications and to advance that conversation with the governments as well. And the fourth thing is to improve existing trading initiatives, such as the reimbursement scheme and the waiver schemes.
Your 2 minutes is up.
Okay. And that we bring forward an economic package that protects our international competitiveness.
I call Cathal Boylan. Apologies, Robbie Butler first.
Let you off that one, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Thank the First Minister for her answer so far. The Minister, I'm sure, will agree with me that businesses have had to bear the pressures of through the Windsor framework of Brexit, and in terms of getting their duties paid back through the HMRC reimbursement scheme and the customs waiver scheme. The Secretary of State has outlined that that might be the recourse for businesses if the tariffs do apply here in Northern Ireland. Would the Minister agree with me that this is not a good nor useful tool to use, that businesses without money for up to 3 months are put under undue pressure, and has the Executive Office been involved in any conversations in that regard?
Minister.
Yeah, this is something that the Economy Minister also has raised with her counterpart, because if we find ourselves in a position, and we don't know if that's where this is going to end, but if we find ourselves in a position at the end of this where you have to apply for the reimbursement, for example, it needs to be simplified. They need to make it easy, and businesses can't wait for 3 months to get that money back. So we need to find a way, and that's what we have encouraged in all of our conversations, that if we get to that juncture, that it needs to be a simplified process where people can, or businesses can actually trade without barriers, or at least with limited barriers in terms of what they do. So the point that you make is something that we are very recognised and have taken on board.
Mr. Boylan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can thank the Minister for her answer so far. But does the Minister know that Brexit has had a huge negative impact socially and economically here? In terms of lessons learned, can the First Minister detail what work is ongoing as a response to the US tariffs to protect the regional and all-Ireland economy?
Yeah, well, thanks. And as I've highlighted, I think that we all witnessed the shockwaves that arose as a direct result of the tariff announcements, and it's created so much uncertainty, so much concern. Businesses are really struggling, find themselves again back in a situation where they don't know what's going to happen next. And if there's anything that businesses dislike more than anything else, it is that uncertainty, because it's very difficult to plan. So throughout all of this crisis, myself, the Deputy First Minister, Kiva as the Economy Minister, we've engaged directly at Prime Ministerial level, at Taoiseach level, Secretary of State level. We will continue to ensure that the voice of our local economy is heard. But I take your point in terms of the all-island economy and the need to ensure that we have frictionless trade, because you can see the growth of the all-island economy over recent years, and obviously we want that to continue. And I want to see free-flowing trade across these islands without barrier, without interruption, so that our businesses can flourish and our economy and our people can flourish. So we'll continue to work our way through this, I think, as we navigate our way through the uncertainty that this period that we're in obviously is dominated by.
Donnelly.
The First Minister for her answers so far. There is clearly currently great instability and uncertainty in global trade due to the Trump tariffs. Does the First Minister recognise the ongoing damage caused by trade friction of any kind, and recognise the need to maximise the benefits of Northern Ireland being able to trade, at least for goods, in all directions as freely as possible?
When we've made, and I agree with you absolutely, and I think we all should work towards a situation where there are no barriers to trade across these islands, on this island, between our islands. I think that is where we should all aim to be. But we've had to highlight, and we have highlighted in every meeting that we've had, in every conversation that we've had, and we have an opportunity to do so again, actually, over the course of May, when we'll have a bilateral again with Keir Starmer. I can't remember the title of the meeting. That's what I was reaching for. But we'll have another opportunity again to highlight our particular challenges that we have here, because we have the Windsor framework, because we've got the added layer of complexity. So we're going to have to try and work our way through it, particularly around rules of origin, but also just to minimise any barriers to trade. I don't want to see barriers to trade for anybody. I want our economy to grow, I want jobs to be created, I want well-paid jobs, I want people to have money in their pockets, so we'll do everything that we can to ensure that is the case.
Justin McDildy.
Shay.
Sure.
There is no joint agreement on this issue.
Mr. McNulty.
First Minister, you have been highly vocal in public about the goal of achieving Irish unity, and yet with your hands on the levers of power in the north, you have taken very few, if any, tangible steps towards formally advancing preparations for unity. The Irish Government, through the Shared Island units, have pumped in billions of euros towards uplifting and uniting communities north and south. Why, in power, are you treading water on Irish unity and the Citizens' Assembly? Why has there been such a gap between your words in public and your actions in government?
I think it's more of a question of why are you so surprised that there's not an agreement in this office on this issue? I mean, it's no secret to anybody that I'm an Irish Republican who wants to unite the people of this island. It's also no secret to anybody that the Deputy First Minister is a unionist who wants to maintain the link with the Union. Therefore adds the complexity to the office that we inhabit. However, I have my own personal views on the issue of constitutional change. I think that we will all be better served by Irish unity. I think we will all be better served with uniting the people of this island and ending the divisions of the past and creating a more inclusive society and a more prosperous economy. And I would encourage the member to use your energy to work with me to achieve that, as opposed to trying to pick silly points that are very far from reality, because there won't be an agreement in this office on this issue.
First Minister, a recent report from the Economic and Social Research Institute provides further evidence that the southern part of our island has higher wages, with a stronger economic growth and better living standards compared to the north. Does the First Minister agree with me that this shows that partition has failed and that it is negatively impacting on our quality of life standards, trade, economic productivity and growth?
Yeah, as I said to the previous answer, I mean, there isn't agreement in the Executive Office on this issue, but personally, I mean, I also have read that report and very much welcome more reports like it coming into the public, because I think that encourages conversation in itself. It creates an opportunity for people to have actually hard data, what it looks like, the benefits of unity across the island. And I think what the report does is highlight the folly of partition, how it's failed every single citizen who lives here. So I do very much welcome the report that's been published and look forward to more and more people engaging on the topic as we move through the weeks, months and years ahead. The best thing that we all could do is actually to work together. The best thing we all could do would be to plan, to prepare, to have the maturity to actually have the debate around what does a health service look like, what does education look like, how can we better people's lives, how do we increase people's standard of living, how do we grow our economy. That's a conversation that I personally would want us to get to a point, and I think that that's increasingly organically happening anyway, but I think we want to see more of it obviously in the time ahead.
Sharon.
Very short, get a hold question 7 please.
In line with the requirements of the Identity and Language Act 2022, we are responsible jointly for the appointment of the Irish Language Commissioner, the Commissioner for the Ulster Scots and the Ulster British Tradition, and the Director and members of the Board of the Office of Identity and Cultural Expression. We are committed to establishing the 3 new bodies and to making the appointments as soon as possible. And we're very pleased to announce that the competitions launched on the 10th of March and they closed on the 28th of March. And it's anticipated that our interviews will now take place over the summer.
Ms. Sharon.
First Minister, could you provide an update as to the current position for each appointment as per the Act?
Minister.
Yeah, as I said, the competitions to recruit the commissioners launched on the 10th of March and closed on the 28th, and I'm pleased to say that the 2 of the panels have already completed their sift of applications back on the 11th of April, and that's for the Irish Language Commissioner, and the 16th of April for the Ulster Scots and British Tradition Commissioner, with the first panel for the Office of Identity and Cultural Expression going to complete on the 9th of May. So we're making good progress. I know that the Irish Language Proficiency Assessment is planned to take place on the 6th of May, and it's anticipated that the presentation and interview stage will be carried out on the 20th of June. And then in relation to the Ulster Scots and Ulster British Tradition Commissioner, it's anticipated that the presentation and interview stage will take place on the 5th of June. So I think, as I said, that I look forward to getting to the point where we're hopefully able to appoint. after the interviews that are held over the summer. It's taken a bit of time to get here, but I'm glad that we are at this juncture.
That concludes the questions to the Minister. We now move to the oral questions to the First and Deputy First Minister's office, and I call Matthew O'Toole.
Speaker, First Minister, you and your ministerial colleagues have been persistent even in blaming austerity, understandably, for constraints on public spending, right down to small sums of money. Your colleague, the Infrastructure Minister, said the £5,000 pedestrianisation of Hill Street couldn't happen because of austerity. In that context, are you comfortable with your colleagues spending tens of thousands of pounds on five-star hotels? And First Minister, have you, since you've been in this role, stayed in a five-star hotel at taxpayer expense?
Minister.
Look, I think a more general point to make is that, well, 2 points that I would make in relation to what you've just said. Firstly, austerity is a real thing. Austerity has happened. Yeah, I know you do. That's why you signed up to the letter that we all sent collectively to the British Government when we first formed the Executive. Austerity has hurt us bad, and we are dealing with a very difficult financial climate as a direct result of it, and continue to do so under this new Labour Government also. When it comes to public money, people should always be very, very prudent with public money, and everything needs to be value for money and needs to be proofed, and you need to be able to stand over every decision that is taken. I do not seek out five-star hotels. I do not seek out to waste public money.
You may not seek it out, First Minister, but we do know that your colleague, the former Economy and Finance Minister, Conor Murphy, stayed in the Fullerton Hotel in Singapore, which says on its website that it reflects the full-blown colonial confidence of its builders. It cost more than £6,000 for him to stay there, much more than the cost of pedestrianising Hill Street. We all agree that austerity was bad, First Minister, but I ask you a specific question. Are you comfortable with your ministerial colleagues staying in five-star hotels, and have you stayed in a five-star hotel at taxpayer expense since you've been in this role? It's quite a straightforward question.
I have no idea of what star of a hotel I've stayed in. I don't interfere with any of that business. Somebody in our office will do the logistics, and that's fine. But what I will say is that I am very conscious of being prudent with public money. And when ministers have a job to do, and they have a job to do, to travel the world, to sell our wares, to create investment here. But I do think that it's important that we don't just reach for the headline. But you're absolutely right. Value for money should be top of the agenda. That's certainly a principle that I adhere to on any of the travel that I make. And I only travel with an objective, which is to better this place, to better people's lives, to increase opportunities for investment, to create jobs, and ensure that we drum up business to tell people that we're very much open for business. And I think that that's important, but I absolutely can concur. Value for money all day long.
Owen Tennyson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First Minister, you'll be aware that on Easter Monday we saw disgraceful scenes whereby those linked to dissident republicanism groomed young people into violent attacks on the PSNI. Can I ask you to join me in condemning that behaviour?
Yes, I absolutely can. Absolutely disgraceful. They should not, dissident Republicans or any group should not exist. They should leave the stage. We're here because we're trying to build a shared society, an inclusive society. I know that's the work that we're all committed to. And I think the scenes that we witnessed in Derry were an absolute disgrace.
Mr. Tennyson.
I thank the First Minister for that answer. First Minister, given what we have seen over the last week and the role of dissident Republicans in that activity, do you stand by your support for the UK and Irish government's interlocutor who we're appointing to engage with those very organisations?
Minister.
I have not pledged support for anybody's interlocutor. I have acknowledged that they are moving to that juncture. What I've been very clear in saying that these groups should not exist. They should not be given financial reward to leave the stage. They should just cease to exist. People shouldn't be engaging them on that basis. But the Irish Government and the British Government will have to stand over any interlocutor they appoint. I certainly won't have any hand in part in it.
Danny Dunaway.
Mr. Speaker, and thanks to the First Minister for her answer so far. I'd just like to ask the First Minister for an update on how work to tackle paramilitarism intersects with the work to promote good relations.
Minister.
I think they're two of the same thing, I think, for sure, because I think that the conversation we just had around the fact that paramilitaries actually still exist isn't acceptable, and everybody should use their office, their elected office, to call it out for what it is and actually tell them to, to desist. I think that if we're going to build a more inclusive society, then we have to continue to work at that. And I'm struck, just given the day that's in it, the commentary that we referred to earlier of Pope Francis in terms of the fact that remarking that we have achieved so much in 25 years, but we still have a journey to go, and the process, or peace, is an ongoing process. I'm committed to doing that through our good relations work, through our ending violence against women and girls, through ending and tackling paramilitarism. All these things are interlinked, and to look at them in silos would do a disservice to our community.
Mr Donnelly.
Minister, for that answer. First Minister, we have seen another recent example in Lisburn, as well as examples in the last few years, outside new housing developments in places as far afield as Antrim and Dungannon, of flags and symbols being intentionally used to intimidate local residents. What steps are being taken to end such intimidation and enable people to live free of territory marking in this way?
Yeah, can I concur with you in terms of calling those people out that are responsible for intimidating communities and actually trying to claim space within communities and by erecting flags and symbols and emblem, and I think that isn't acceptable, and I can certainly say to you that I am determined to build a better future for everybody here, and that includes tackling some of these issues that have not been tackled to date. I know there's a difference in terms of perhaps approach in terms of what has been done before with the FICT report, but we now have an opportunity with it being looked at in the round with the other areas of work to actually maybe advance this and do something about it in terms of what comes next. So I look forward to engaging with you actually on this topic as we move forward.
Declan Kearney.
First Minister, earlier this month in Philadelphia, former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar made a speech in which he reiterated his very strong view that it is now time to move from Irish unity as an aspiration to Irish unity as a political and policy objective for an Irish government, and he called on us all to look to Irish unity as the defining challenge of our generation. What are your views on that intervention?
Mr.
In the vein of the previous conversation we had earlier, there's no joint office opinion on this issue, but I very much welcome his intervention. I think it's a very helpful intervention, and I just wish that more people had the maturity and the ability to actually enter into the conversation and to embrace it in a way that is actually, we could have one objective in terms of making everybody's life better, and I think that's the prize for us all in terms of what we can achieve here going forward. And I don't see any contradiction actually whatsoever in terms of being able to govern on a day-to-day basis in terms of public services and trying to better people's lives here, whilst also having that conversation alongside. I think it's happening organically. So I think for me it's about much more than sticking the north onto the south. For me it's about unity of people, and for me it's about building that better future for everybody.
Mr. Kearney.
And I'm very sensitive to the fact that there is a divergence in thinking in relation to the issues relating to the constitutional future of Ireland within your office. But nevertheless, do you agree that it is now time for the British Secretary of State to set definitive criteria for the calling of a unity referendum? And do you agree that this British government should commence a conversation with the Irish government in relation to setting out the transition for Irish reunification?
Yes, I mean, again, personal view, I think that it is the time to prepare, to plan, to engage, to have the conversations, and I think that this is work that clearly both governments as co-guarantors of the agreement need to put their minds to, and certainly I would like to have a more formal process where we are all able to engage around what this potential is, and I believe there is huge potential. That's why I think it's time for a Citizens' Assembly to be called. I think it's absolutely time for the Irish Government to begin that planning and preparation. And I think that, certainly my ambition for the people of this island is an island that is both inclusive, that's welcoming, where people can, have their views respected, their identity respected. There's a lot of continuity in the Good Friday Agreement because it's an international agreement that will carry through, so identity is very much protected. So I absolutely think that it's time to build a better future for everybody that calls this place home, and I would encourage both the Irish Government and the British Government, with responsibility in particular in relation to the criteria, to be fulsome and come forward with plans so that we all can understand what it is that we are working to.
Orla Flynn.
First Minister, earlier today the Economy Minister, Kiva Archibald, announced her Good Jobs Employment Rights Bill. Can you give us your assessment of this announcement, please?
Minister.
I know that the Minister will be bringing forward lots of discussion in this chamber over the course of the next number of years, particularly in relation to her Good Jobs Bill, and I look forward to the debate in this chamber. I think there's no doubt that this is one of the most significant piece of workers' rights legislation ever to be introduced in the North. So I want to praise the work of the Economy Minister, of Kiva Archibald, for progressing the work in this legislation. Key parts of that legislation itself will include paid leave for parents whose newborn is admitted to neonatal care. That's compassionate legislation in my mind. Ending zero-hour contracts, introducing the right to disconnect from work, stronger rights for trade unions and their members. And I think that these proposals and others will really genuinely put money into workers' and families' pockets. It will strengthen their rights, it will support their families, and it will empower trade unions. So I think, as well as benefiting the individual worker, which is ultimately, obviously, what it's all about, it's also going to really benefit our business community also, and the wider economy to thrive. This, to me, is in essence what it's all about. It's about politics making a difference in people's lives. And today, I think Kiva's Archibald, the Economy Minister's statement that she'll make, is certainly one that will be a huge positive step in demonstrating our commitment to delivering for workers, families and communities.
Before I call Ms Flynn for supplementary, I would say it's more appropriate to question the Minister who's responsible at a later point, but go ahead for your supplementary.
Okay. Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Will the First Minister commit to working with all Ministers and the Executive to try and progress this legislation as quickly as possible?
Minister.
Yes, I mean, I want to see this legislation progressed as quickly as possible, and as I said, I look forward to the debate in this Assembly, but it's game-changing possibility. That's how I would embrace it. It's game-changing possibility that these proposals can begin to be rolled out. And I'm sure there'll be differences of opinion, and that's all right. We'll have those political debates, but absolutely committed to working with all ministers and with colleagues here in the Assembly to ensure that it happens, and to support the Economy Minister and what she tries to achieve. Obviously, cross-party support endorsing the full implementation of the legislation would be a very powerful political message to workers and families. And I think that, you know, there's huge opportunity for us here, so I would love to see the fact that we could potentially unite around this legislation and build a stronger economy in which both workers and businesses and our economy all thrive.
Aoife Finnegan.
First Minister, earlier this month the Court of Appeal ruled that the British Government's refusal to hold a public inquiry into the killing of Sean Brown, who was abducted and shot dead by loyalists in 1997, is unlawful. Does she agree with me that there should be no more delays in establishing a public inquiry into Sean Brown's murder?
First Minister.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I've been at Bridie's side and will continue to be at the family's side, and I think that she herself is such a strong woman who's held herself with grace and with courage and with dignity, and stood outside the court early this month, and she made that direct plea to the British Government to not have her to travel to London. So I think that no matter how you look at it, the Lord Chief Justice Keegan has been clear. The decision to refuse a public inquiry cannot stand, and it's unlawful, and it's in breach of Article 2 obligations. So the British Government need to get on and grant the public inquiry. 5 times the legal system has said that this needs to happen. The Brown family have waited for far too long. It is time for them to have truth and justice and accountability, and they should not have to, and particularly Bridie, at her age, should not have to endure the indignity and the insult of further delays and appeals to the legal process, because the British Government are burying their head in the sand and ignoring the reality of the fact that the courts have said that the family are entitled to have to ensure that they have the public inquiry.
Ms Finnegan.
What is the First Minister's view on recent engagements between the Irish and British Government on the issue of legacy?
First Minister.
Well, I think the recent meeting that there was of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference over the course of last week, I welcome the fact that legacy was on the agenda. It's very much for the two governments to work together on this area. And I think the fact that there was their joint commitment to establishing legacy institutions which are fully human rights compliant and within the parameters of the Stormont House Agreement 2014 is something that I welcome. But as we know that the legacy framework was endorsed back in 2014, the Stormont House Agreement, that is where we have the basis on which to move forward. So I want to work with both governments. I want to resolve outstanding issues. I want to ensure that all families out there get access to truth and justice. And I think that what's crucially important is that whatever is brought forward over the course of the weeks ahead, it has to command the confidence of families, because that's what this is about. It's about families, it's about loved ones, it's about grief, it's about healing, it's about truth and justice. And the only way that we'll be able to move forward in a way that commands their confidence is if we actually have Article 2 compliant frameworks, and that we have something that will actually command their confidence.
Members take their ease, and we move to the next line of question, which is to the Minister for Infrastructure.